Alien Cowboy claimed a remote Texas ranch, but the Russian alien arrived with 200 horseback warriors. The dust cloud on the horizon stretched for miles across the Texas panhandle like a brown wall rising from the prairie itself, and Jebediah Stone knew with the cold certainty of 40 years' experience that 200 riders were approaching his ranch with the kind of purpose that usually ended in bloodshed. What made this particular dust cloud different from the usual threats, rustlers, claim jumpers, or hostile war parties, was the way his alien-enhanced senses detected electromagnetic signatures that no terrestrial cavalry should have possessed. Standing on the porch of the ranch house he had built with his own hands in the most remote corner of the Texas territory, Jeb watched through eyes that could perceive light spectra unknown to human science as the approaching force came into visual range. The riders sat their horses with military precision that spoke of professional training, but their mounts moved with the fluid grace of animals that had been bred and enhanced far beyond anything that had ever grazed on Earth's grasslands. At the head of this impressive cavalcade rode a figure whose presence dominated the landscape around him through sheer force of personality and barely contained power. Even at a distance of 3 miles, Jeb could see that the leader's bearing was unmistakably aristocratic, his posture that of someone accustomed to command and absolute obedience. More tellingly, the electromagnetic aura surrounding him carried the distinctive signature that marked him as a member of the Volga Federation, a spacefaring empire that had been expanding aggressively across this sector of the galaxy for the past millennium. Jebediah Stone was not the simple cattle rancher he appeared to be, just as his name was not the one he had been born with on a world orbiting a star that humans would not discover for another 3 centuries. He was what his people called a deep territory operative, assigned to establish and maintain outposts in regions that other galactic civilizations might find strategically valuable. His ranch, which appeared to be nothing more than a successful but isolated cattle operation, actually served as a monitoring station and forward base for the Terran Colonial Authority. The choice of Texas for his mission had been strategic rather than personal. The vast distances, sparse population, and general lawlessness of the American frontier made it ideal for covert operations that required both secrecy and operational flexibility. For 18 years, Jeb had been building his cover identity while gathering intelligence about Earth's development and defending Terran interests against potential incursion by rival galactic powers. The approaching cavalry represented exactly the kind of threat his mission had been designed to detect and counter. The Volga Federation had been probing the outer edges of Earth's solar system for decades, testing human defenses and looking for opportunities to establish their own colonial presence. Jeb's reports to his superiors had warned that such an attempt was inevitable, but he had not expected it to take the form of a direct challenge to his own carefully established territory. The leader of the approaching force was close enough now for Jeb to identify him as definitely non-human, despite his generally humanoid appearance. His height, easily 7 feet even in the saddle, his pale skin that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light, and especially his eyes, brilliant silver orbs that held depths of intelligence and experience that no human gaze could contain, all marked him as a being whose origins lay far beyond Earth's atmosphere. When the Volga commander finally brought his impressive cavalcade to a halt, just outside the effective range of the defensive systems hidden around Jeb's ranch compound, his voice carried clearly across the intervening distance despite being pitched at conversational levels. The words, delivered in perfect English with a slight accent that sounded vaguely Slavic, were formal, but carried unmistakable undertones of threat. "Greetings, Terran operative," the commander said, dismounting from his enhanced horse with fluid grace that defied the laws of physics as humans understood them. "I am Prince Dmitry Volkov of the 3rd Expeditionary Division, Volga Federation Colonial Forces. By rights ancient and powers granted, I claim this territory and all surrounding lands for the greater glory of the Federation. Your presence here constitutes illegal occupation of sovereign Volga space." The challenge was delivered with the kind of measured formality that characterized diplomatic contact between spacefaring civilizations, but Jeb understood immediately that diplomacy was a formality that would quickly give way to more direct methods of resolution if his response was deemed unsatisfactory. The 200 warriors arranged in perfect formation behind Prince Volkov were not there for ceremonial purposes. Jeb stepped down from his porch and walked slowly toward the fence line that separated his ranch compound from the open prairie, his movements casual, but his senses fully alert for the first sign of hostile action. His own appearance was designed to project the image of a successful frontier rancher, weathered by sun and wind, strong from years of physical labor, confident but not aggressive in his bearing. What Prince Volkov could not have known was that the simple-looking cowboy approaching him possessed capabilities that had been enhanced far beyond baseline human norms through technologies that the Volga Federation had never encountered. Jeb's apparent casualness concealed reflexes faster than any organic nervous system should have been able to achieve, strength that could bend steel with bare hands, and sensory capabilities that allowed him to perceive and analyze threats across multiple spectra simultaneously. "Prince Volkov," Jeb replied, his own voice carrying harmonics that identified him to alien hearing as definitely not human despite his appearance. "I reckon there might be some confusion here about territorial boundaries and legal jurisdiction. This here's Texas territory, United States of America, planet Earth. Been that way for quite a spell now, and I got the proper papers to prove my legal claim to this particular piece of it." The response was designed to establish his position while leaving room for negotiation, but Jeb was already calculating tactical possibilities and defensive strategies. The ranch compound had been designed to appear normal, while incorporating defensive capabilities that could hold off significant military forces. But 200 enhanced warriors, led by a Volga prince, represented a serious challenge to even his advanced preparations. Prince Volkov's reaction to Jeb's response revealed the aristocratic arrogance that characterized the Volga nobility's approach to dealing with what they considered inferior species. His laugh was genuinely amused but carried undertones of contempt that made his opinion of human legal concepts abundantly clear. "Papers?" Volkov said, gesturing broadly toward the endless expanse of prairie surrounding them. "My dear Terran friend, you speak of papers as if they have meaning beyond your own small world. The Volga Federation's claim to this sector predates your species' development of written language by several thousand years. Your United States exists only because we have not yet chosen to exercise our ancient rights." The prince's words were accompanied by subtle hand signals to his warriors, positioning them for what appeared to be a coordinated assault on the ranch compound. But Jeb's enhanced hearing caught something in Volkov's tone that suggested the Volga commander was not entirely confident about his position, despite his public bravado. The truth, which both leaders understood but neither was willing to acknowledge openly, was that the situation they were facing fell into a gray area of galactic law that had never been clearly resolved. Earth's status as a developing world gave it certain protections under interstellar treaties, but those protections were complicated by the presence of multiple colonial powers who had established covert operations on the planet. The Terran colonial authorities' claim to Earth was based on species origin and prior occupation, but the Volga Federation could legitimately argue that their exploration of this sector gave them territorial rights that superseded human development. The legal complexities could be argued for decades in galactic courts, but the practical reality was that possession would ultimately determine control regardless of legal precedent. Jeb decided to test the strength of the prince's position by revealing knowledge that no simple rancher should have possessed. Prince Dmitry Volkov of House Volkov, third son of the Stellar Throne, graduate of the Imperial War College, veteran of the Centauri campaigns, he said, reciting details that demonstrated extensive intelligence gathering. "I'm guessing you didn't come all this way just to have a legal discussion about territorial sovereignty. What does the Volga Federation really want with one small ranch in the middle of nowhere?" The effect of Jeb's detailed knowledge was immediate and dramatic. Prince Volkov's casual confidence shifted to alert wariness as he realized that he was facing an opponent who possessed intelligence capabilities far beyond what should have been available to a frontier operative. His warriors responded to their leader's change in demeanor by tightening their formation and bringing their weapons to ready positions. "It appears," Volkov said, his voice now carrying the cold formality of a professional soldier rather than the casual arrogance of an aristocrat, "that you are considerably more than the simple cattle rancher you pretend to be. Perhaps we should discuss this matter with the honesty that our respective positions deserve." What followed was perhaps the most unusual diplomatic negotiation in the history of the American frontier, conducted between representatives of two galactic civilizations while standing in a Texas prairie with 200 alien warriors providing an intimidating backdrop. The conversation that developed revealed the true scope of the interests at stake and the complex political maneuvering that had led to this confrontation. Prince Volkov explained that the Volga Federation's interest in Earth went far beyond simple colonial expansion. The planet's location at the intersection of several major stellar trade routes made it strategically valuable as a potential military and commercial base. More importantly, Earth's rapid technological development and aggressive expansion tendencies had caught the attention of multiple galactic powers who wanted to either control or eliminate what they saw as a potential threat to regional stability. The Terran Colonial Authority's strategy of establishing covert bases like Jeb's Ranch was part of a defensive network designed to protect Earth from exactly the kind of colonial expansion that Volkov represented. But the Federation had its own legitimate security concerns about allowing potential enemies to establish military positions in regions they considered part of their sphere of influence. Jeb, for his part, revealed that his ranch was not just an isolated outpost, but part of a comprehensive defensive grid that covered much of the western United States. His mission was to monitor potential threats and coordinate with other Terran operatives to prevent any single colonial power from gaining a decisive advantage on Earth. The confrontation with Volkov's force was not unexpected, but was certainly more direct than his superiors had anticipated. The negotiation was complicated by the fact that both leaders were operating under orders that did not allow for compromise on fundamental territorial claims, but both also understood that a direct military confrontation would likely escalate beyond their ability to control. The Volga Federation did not want to trigger a full-scale interstellar incident over one ranch, and the Terran Authority could not afford to lose their Western monitoring network to foreign occupation. The solution that emerged from their extended discussion was as unconventional as their situation. Rather than fighting a war that neither side could afford, they would establish a joint monitoring agreement that allowed both civilizations to maintain their security interests while avoiding the larger conflict that direct confrontation would inevitably trigger. The agreement called for Jeb to continue operating his ranch as a Terran outpost, while allowing Prince Volkov to establish a diplomatic mission in the area that would serve the Federation's intelligence needs without constituting a formal occupation. Both sides would share information about other potential threats to regional stability, and both would work to prevent any third parties from gaining advantages that could destabilize the existing balance of power. The arrangement was formalized through methods that existed outside human legal frameworks, but were binding under the galactic treaties that governed interaction between spacefaring civilizations. Jeb and Prince Volkov exchanged formal oaths of cooperation and mutual defense, creating an alliance that was both practical and highly unusual, given their respective national loyalties. The implementation of their agreement required careful coordination to avoid attracting attention from human authorities who would not understand the true nature of the situation. Prince Volkov's 200 warriors were dispersed throughout the territory, establishing small camps that appeared to be nothing more than Russian immigrant settlements, but actually served as monitoring posts for Federation intelligence operations. The prince himself took up residence in a newly constructed building on Jeb's ranch, nominally serving as a business partner in the cattle operation, but actually coordinating Federation activities throughout the region. Their professional relationship gradually evolved into something approaching genuine friendship, as they discovered that they shared similar views about honor, duty, and the responsibilities that came with serving powers larger than themselves. The months that followed proved that cooperation between potential enemies could be more effective than conflict, when both sides were committed to making the arrangement work. Jeb's local knowledge and established networks complemented Volkov's strategic capabilities and advanced technology, creating an intelligence operation that was more effective than either could have achieved alone. Their partnership also demonstrated that the rigid territorial divisions that characterized galactic politics were not always practical when dealing with the complex realities of frontier life. The threats that they faced together, from hostile alien species that recognized neither Terran nor Volga authority, from human criminal organizations that posed dangers to both their operations, from natural disasters that required coordinated responses, created bonds of mutual dependence that transcended their original national loyalties. The most significant test of their alliance came when a third galactic power, the Draconis Empire, attempted to establish its own foothold in the region by supporting a large-scale Indian uprising that threatened to destabilize the entire territory. The Empire's strategy was to use the conflict to eliminate both Terran and Volga operations while establishing their own colonial presence under cover of supporting indigenous human resistance. The response to this threat required Jeb and Prince Volkov to coordinate their forces in ways that revealed the full extent of their respective capabilities. The battle that followed was fought across multiple levels of reality, with advanced weapons and tactics that would have seemed like magic to human observers while employing strategies and technologies that represented the cutting edge of galactic military science. The victory over the Draconis intervention was decisive but costly, requiring both leaders to reveal aspects of their operations that they had hoped to keep secret. But the successful defense of their shared territory proved that their alliance was more than just a temporary convenience and had evolved into a genuine partnership based on mutual respect and common interests. Years later, as Jeb and Prince Volkov sat on the porch of the ranch house watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson, they often reflected on the confrontation that had brought them together and the unlikely friendship that had developed from what began as a territorial dispute. The 200 warriors who had once seemed like an invasion force had become an extended family of sorts, their presence providing security and companionship that made the isolation of frontier life more bearable. Their partnership had become a model for the kind of interspecies cooperation that would eventually allow multiple galactic civilizations to coexist peacefully in regions where their interests overlapped. The lessons they learned about trust, communication, and the value of finding common ground despite fundamental differences would influence diplomatic protocols for generations to come. The ranch that had begun as a simple monitoring post had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic politics, a genuinely cooperative venture between representatives of civilizations that had been enemies for millennia. The success of their alliance would eventually lead to formal treaties between their respective governments and the establishment of joint operations throughout the galaxy. But perhaps most importantly, their story demonstrated that the most intractable conflicts could sometimes be resolved through the simple recognition that former enemies could become valuable allies when they shared common goals and were willing to trust each other despite their differences. The alien cowboy who had claimed a remote Texas ranch had found in his Russian counterpart not a threat to be defeated, but a partner whose different perspective and capabilities made both of them more effective than either could have been alone. In the end, the confrontation that had seemed likely to end in violence had instead become the foundation for a friendship that enriched both their lives and advanced the cause of peace throughout the galaxy. The dust cloud that had announced the arrival of 200 horseback warriors had also brought the opportunity for cooperation and understanding that transcended the boundaries of nationality, species, and the vast distances that separated their homeworlds among the stars.